however he does it. Mr. Charlie Miller, Principal Analyst of Independent Security Evaluators. Now, a quick intro before we begin. He's the Principal Analyst, as I've mentioned. He's for Independent Security Evaluators, best known as the first to publicly create a remote exploit against the iPhone, and has discovered flaws in numerous applications on various operating systems. He has spoken at the workshop on the economics of information security, Black Hat, DEF CON, TourCon, ShmooCon, and CanSec West. He has authored the book Fuzzing for Software Security Testing and Quality Assurance, and the forthcoming The Mac Hacker's Handbook. He won a MacBook Air by winning the Pwn2Own contest in 2008 for breaking into a fully patched Mac OS X computer, and has a PhD from the University of Notre Dame. Mr. Charlie Miller.
Thank you. Thanks for the introduction. Thanks for coming. I'm going to talk to you about iPhones and iPhone security, and I brought two iPhones to play with. So it's fun to go through the security checkpoints in the airports when I have two iPhones and I have two computers. So they always think I'm up to something, and I guess I am. All right, so that great introduction, I'm just going to skip most of the stuff except Mac Hacker's Handbook, me and Dino Daizovi. It's coming out, not probably in January, but sometime. It's going to be good. All right, so what am I going to talk about today? Basically, I'll start with some iPhone basic stuff, you know what it is, and then I'll look at the App Store and anything that's relevant there. Then I'll move on to talk about how you look for bugs in the iPhone, how you exploit them, and then different things you can do once you're running code on the iPhone. All right, so the very basic stuff. So what's the iPhone? Well, it's the phone that Apple produced. So it's slick and cool, and all the cool kids have it. It runs basically a stripped-down version of the same thing you would get on the desktop, except the processor is different. So it's an ARM processor. It has 128 megabytes of RAM, and depending on what model you get, it's got flash memory for storage. And at least in the US, I think everywhere, it's locked to a particular carrier. Okay, so what's bad about the iPhone from our perspective? Well, the first thing is it's locked out of the box, and the 3G ones are still pretty much locked. As far as a little computer, which is what it is, it lacks a lot of the basic stuff you would want. So it doesn't have a shell. It doesn't have LS. So basically, if you break into it, if you could get a shell on it, there's not much you could do. So if you can't type LS, you're kind of in trouble. Also, applications and libraries on it will only run if they've been signed by Apple. So those are the bummers. All right, what about this carrier locking I'm talking about? So basically, if you get an iPhone in the US at least, you have to use AT&T or else it won't work. Of course, there's ways around that. The 3G one right now, they still don't know a way to unlock that with software, but there's some hardware things you can do that'll unlock it. The 2G ones, the basic software that you use to jailbreak it, which I'll talk about later, will unlock it for me. And my one here is unlocked, but it's not that great. Okay, so what is this jailbreaking business? Well, jailbreaking is a process that allows you to access to the file system, and so you can put files on it and do other stuff. There's a program called iPwning that works against the latest firmware for the iPhone. Some of the things it does is it changes the partitions around a little bit for you. It installs programs that allow you to install other things. So some of the other things that are available for it that you can install. So these are programs that people have built already for you. You can put SSHD on it, so that's nice. GCC, GDB, Python. So lots of things you might want to use. And it also turns off a lot of the code signing. So if you've jailbroken your iPhone, then you can put apps that you write on it, and they'll work. So that's nice. Okay, so what's the inside of this thing look like when you start digging around? Well, once you have a shell like I have on this screen here, now you can start looking at some of the processes. And I said it's a stripped-down version of Mac OS X, and it's true. If you're on PS, you see a lot of the same processes. It's like launchd, MDNS responders there. But there are some things that are specific to the iPhone you'll see. So here you'll see Springboard. So Springboard is the GUI for the iPhone. It's like, it's the window manager. And then you see mobile Safari as opposed to Safari, and mobile music player as opposed to iTunes. So it basically a lot of the same stuff, just stripped down versions of it. And then you'll see this launch from SB option, SB being Springboard, of course. Okay, what about the file system? Well, if you do an LS, it basically looks like your desktop. So, again, not too surprising. What are some of the more interesting iPhone-specific files you might care about? So this is a list of some of them. So they're all SQLite 3 databases. Call history shows all the calls you've made. Notes is like the little sticky note type application. All the information there. You got your voicemail, address book, pictures in your address book, and then your calendar. So this is basically all the files you would want to grab off someone's iPhone if you broke into it. Okay, so like I said, that it's this, these things aren't just flat files. They're these SQLite 3 files. And here's an example of me running SQLite 3 and dumping out the contents of the SMS database. So you see it's got some stuff about the structure of the actual databases that it contains, and then it's got some of the actual lines. So if you look at the bottom two, what's bolded is it's the phone number that the text message came in from, and then the data. So yes, it's snowing here. It probably doesn't snow here much, but it snows where I live. And then it talks about my kids and stuff. So yeah, this is you could just dump this file and get everyone's text messages. And the interesting thing is, I don't know if this is true anymore, but at first, at least on the iPhone, even if you cleared all of your text messages, they were still in the database. So even if a person was very careful to delete all their text messages, if you got on their phone and got this database, you would still see all their text messages. This is something that you'll see on the desktop version of Mac OS X 2, but it's on the iPhone as well. So there's some programs that have to do with DRM that they don't like you to debug, and FairPlay-D is the one that's in charge of DRM on the iPhone. If you try to attach to it, it basically just makes GDB crash. So that's no fun. And the way that this works is because Mac OS X has this PT deny attach option that you can pass to ptrace. And what that says, I excerpted the man page here. What it says basically is if anyone's already attached to you and you issue this ptrace command, then bail. And if no one's attached to you yet, if they try to attach, then you segfault them. So that's not nice. But of course, there's ways to get around it. The normal trick you do on the desktop is you just run it inside of a debugger, and anytime they call ptrace, you make sure that you don't actually do what they want. You can't do that here because FairPlay-D is launched. The way it's launched, you can't run it in a debugger in time to catch the ptrace. So the way you have to break it is you basically need to modify the lib system where ptrace lives such that it doesn't actually go in far enough down to call the kernel to activate it. And then you need to modify FairPlay-D to where it loads the modified libc as opposed to what they call lib system on Macs. So they install the modified one as opposed to the real one. So, and that's how you can beat that if you want. I don't know why you would really care, but just so you know. Okay, so what about building apps for the iPhone? Well, there's a few ways you can do it. So one is there's actually something you can download that someone built GCC for you, so I can show you that if you want. So they actually have GCC on your iPhone if you want, so you can build stuff, but it's super slow. You can do it from your desktop. You can build the whole tool chain, like you get GCC, Make, GDB, whatever you want. And there's a project on Google Code, iPhone Dev. Or if you pay to become an iPhone SDK member, then you get Apple's version of GCC, and it'll cross-compile and build stuff for the iPhone. That's the best way to do it, but you have to pay and you have to sign their NDA and all that stuff. So whatever you want. Okay, so what about code signing? So on the iPhone, only signed applications will run, signed by Apple's private key, which you don't have, obviously. But as a developer, you can, they still want to allow for you to, test your applications on the iPhone. So they have to allow some way to do this, right? This is what happens if you try to run something that's not signed. So I try to run my program, and it just says killed. So you can't do it. So what you do is if you want to develop for them, you of course sign away your life in the NDA, and then you get a certificate from them. And what you can do is you can tell it like, okay, this is my iPhone, so I want my certificate to work on this iPhone. So at that point, once you do that, then your iPhone you can think signed by Apple or you work on the iPhone. Again, I say here, so at that point, your certificate will work on your phone, but nobody else's. But Apple's key works everywhere, and the applications that you download from the App Store are signed by Apple's key, so that's why they work. So there's this one other way that you can do it. So like, what if you're a developer and you want to sort of distribute it to a bunch of people so they can test it for you? And the way that Apple set this up is called ad hoc distribution. So basically, like, you can have a beta tester give you their this particular, it's like a serial number unique to the device called the Unique Device Identifier, UDID. So if they give you that, you can create a certificate, and you give them a particular file to put on their phone, and at that point, their phone, it's like they've been provisioned for you, but you didn't have to actually plug them into your computer. So there's a limit of 100 people that can do that for you. But what you can do, and someone actually had a website that did this for a while, but it's gone now, so I imagine that Apple got mad at them. So what you can do, though, the limit of 100 is sort of weird. So say you have 100 beta testers and you have one more person who wants to join up. You can just remove one of your old beta testers and add a new one and ship it out to that guy, and it's going to work. So then you can you can have more than 100. It's just you have to do something every time. And it's sort of a pain. So like I said, there was this guy, and I give the link here, and what he did was you could send him your UDID, and he would send you, the file you need to install his program. So he had like thousands of beta testers, right? Really, it was just a way for him to distribute his application without using the App Store. But I think he got in trouble. But the reason I bring this up is, what happens if you want to run something and you don't, you're not Apple, right? And say you're a bad guy and you're breaking into someone's iPhone. Well, obviously your shellcode doesn't have to be signed because it's running inside assigned processes, process space. So like whether it's Safari or whatever. So that doesn't need to be signed. But what that code can do is it can get the UDID of the compromised device. So there's APIs that allow your code to do that. So the shellcode can get the UDID. It can send it home, and then it can, back at bad guy headquarters, you have the guy's UDID, and you just pretend he's going to be your beta tester. So you take whatever binary you want to run on his phone, you sign it with your certificate that's been provisioned, with your certificate that's set up for that ad hoc distribution. You put that binary on his phone along with that mobile provision file, and then all of a sudden you've got something that runs on his phone. So why would you want to do that? Well, shellcode can do whatever it wants, so in some sense you don't need to do that, but writing all of your payloads in assembly is sort of a pain, so it's easier to write it in a higher level language. Also, your shellcode, it's only running while the phone's on, so what happens when he reboots or whatever? So if you can drop binaries and libraries and stuff on his phone, that's better because then when he reboots, you're always there, you get persistent access to the phone. So that's why you might want to do that. Okay, what about if the phone's already jailbroken? So I said that when you jailbreak it, it removes most of the code signing, but not all of it. They leave a little bit in, I guess just because they were lazy. They could have removed it. So this is an example. So there's a program called LDID. That if you run that, it fixes up the binary. Doesn't actually sign it, but it fixes it up enough that it'll run. So here, I try to run test, the same one that's not signed before, and it doesn't work. Then I run LDID, I run test, and then it works. So that's how it works on jailbroken phones. That's easy. So if you're breaking into guys whose phones are already jailbroken, you don't really need to worry about signing. You can just run LDID on the thing and then drop it on their phone. Okay, so that's basically all the basic stuff. So what the iPhone is and what it does. Now I'm going to move on to sort of more security-related stuff. So the first thing is, if you want to break into people's phones, you need to find bugs in their phone. And how do you find bugs in the iPhone? Well, like I said, it basically runs a stripped-down version of Mac OS X. So that's sort of the first place you can look. Much of that code's the same, except it's actually a much smaller attack surface, so it's harder to find